my Juicy co-creators, Lilou here on the Juicy Living Tour. Today I'm in beautiful Santa Monica with the, can I say model guru?
Maybe just Yogi Cameron.
So Cameron, I'm excited to be interviewing you today. I've heard many great things about you, and I think it's a very important conversation, and especially in these days where things are really shifting and changing. Do you feel this change? Are we already in that change? Is it occurring?
I think it's occurring. There's a lot more change to come. I think it's like anything. The surface is happening and everybody sees it boiling. So, but underneath we still have to do a lot of work. Yeah. And obviously, I mean, you practice yoga. Do we say practicing yoga? I'm more on the yogic path. So postures are a very tiny part of my practice. I more do bhakti, devotional practices. I live partly in India. I'm in temple a lot. We do lots of pujas. So a lot of rituals. The past was all about rituals, and now we don't really do them. We've really gone to the physical aspect of yogic path. The rituals take up a lot of time, and people don't have a lot of time these days, and they got children and work and everything, so it's much more difficult.
Is that still actual, those rituals? Are you saying that we need to bring those back, actually? That's what's been missing?
Yeah, because rituals are the sort of grounding of the practice that we do. Without the rituals, we don't have the root. The root comes from rituals. So going to temple, doing all these practices, chanting and doing all these things, how we get up in the morning. That's why Ayurveda and yoga are science that's practiced together by gurus and yogis and renunciates and all that, because Ayurveda gives you that way of living, your diet, your lifestyle, your sleep, your work, all of those things. Yoga gives you a way of thinking and beyond. So the mind and the body come together, and then the spirit takes you up, So you need that grounding. And now we've lost rituals. So our rituals have sort of gone, and now we've replaced them with all sorts of other things. Yeah.
Are you disappointed to see sometimes how yoga is practiced in some of the gyms? Or?
No, if you're disappointed, then your mind's functioning too much. What you got to do is understand that everything has an evolutionary path. And we're just going through a very material time. Kali Yuga, the age that we're going through, is very much about people wanting money, wanting more children, wanting to eat more, wanting to do everything more and more and more. You buy another car, they're never happy. That is Kali Yuga. So we're naturally going through it. It's, the people actually living it fully are the ones who living it, are the ones actually on the yoga and the yogic path, because they're just giving into it. They're going, I just want to consume everything. And us who are on the yogic path are actually suffering more because we're fighting it. But we know through our karma that we're not supposed to touch everything.
Is there in the yogi philosophy another phase coming up soon? Is it written?
It's written, but not soon. Each yuga, this is the shortest yuga, and this yuga is said to go on for about 437,000 years. And it's we're only in it at the moment. We've only really started it. Sat Yuga is a much more balanced and beautiful time where all souls know why they're here and they live in harmony. Treta Yuga, Devpara Yuga, they're all much lighter. Kali, which what we're going through now, is the most densest and fierce and materialistic time. So people's natural urge is to want more. They're never satisfied.
Meditation, yoga helps, or
it helps, but even the greatest meditators, they're really not going anywhere because Kali is pulling you down. That's why it is the way it is. Imagine in Sat Yuga, when it was very balanced, we didn't have cars. No, the mind would never come up with something so imbalanced. We wouldn't come up with planes. We had much more inner kindness and inner contentment, so we didn't ever come up or invent things. But in this yuga, we're inventing things like crazy. We're into electronics and we're into the next thing, and now we want to go to the moon, and then we want to go to Saturn, and then we want to go somewhere else. We're just not satisfied with where we are. So it's man's insatiable desire through his ego that really wants to conquer everybody and everything, and that's why everybody's divorced 5 times. They get $5, they want $10. If they got 10 million, they want 100 million. You know.
Are you saying it's not possible to feel a spirit, or to feel enlightened, or to feel good in these times?
Look, I do many of the rituals. I live in a much more yogic way, let's say, than most people can, because they're not committing to it. And it's still so difficult. It's so difficult. I meet Himalayan yogis. I go up to the Himalayas. Even they're having a hard time, because it's the earth that's in this Milky Way, in this universe, that has going through a certain time. So the energy that's pulling on you, no matter how much work you do, how much you do, is still pulling on you. So you still have to go through it. So maybe I go through it in a little bit more calmer way, and the Himalayan yogi is going even a little bit more calmer way. But certain things are just, through our karma, is not possible this lifetime.
It seems like quite a tough path, because from my understanding in interviewing teachers, or at least people sharing their thoughts, we create our reality too somehow. So there is this aspect of the harder we think the road is, the harder it gets.
Sure. Well, there's reality and then there's truth. So truth is one. Right? It's not changeable. But reality you can change. Depending on if I'm looking over there, then my reality is that view over there. If I look this way, then my reality is this view. So realities are constantly changing depending on what I choose to eat, what I choose to look at, what I choose to, what time I choose to sleep, all of those things. But otherwise, everything else is just happening. I don't really have control over it. So if something happens now, you and I, it's out of our control, right? You have control of the mic. That's about it. And I have control of what I say. But we're just sitting here and anything can happen, right? So that shows you that really reality keeps passing. It's an illusion that keeps moving and passing and moving and passing. So truth is what we want to stay in. But truth is very hard to understand because the mind is so up and down, up and down.
Is there something as truth, or we each carry our truth?
No, truth is one. That means truth is already set. The universal truth, the godly truth, the divine truth, that's already set. So we're not the guardians of that. We just either live by it or we don't. That's the choice.
How do we know the path of the gods, or to live that and be in that space daily? How?
You have to do your rituals, you have to do your practice. You know, it's not let's get up, meditate for 10 minutes. That doesn't take you far, you know, because God doesn't know time. It's really, do you live your life by that path? And most people don't because they've chosen another path. But it's very difficult. But it doesn't mean that you have to sweat it and get upset about it or get depressed about it. It's just you have to choose how you want to live and then live it. You know, years ago, I always used to have this debate with a friend of mine, and I wrote about him in my first book, The Guru and You, and I put him at the end of the first book. I used to say, my friend, he's always like debating me, and he one day, you know, comes to me and says, you know, I need to be healthy. And I say, but you know, you're a music promoter, you go out all the time, you love to drink, and you just love to have a great time in life. What people are dying to live, you know, you live it. So why would you want to come on my path? He said, yeah, but I think sometimes it's better I'm healthy. I said, yeah, but it's just not in you, right? You've got to be more truthful to live the path that's in you rather than look at somebody else's path and say, I want to live that. That's being untruthful, right? So everybody has their path. So I have this inclination because it's in me. So
I'm glad you say that. This is a very big distinction right now.
Yeah, well, everybody's looking at somebody else's life going, I should be doing that. No, the one who plays football in an amazing way, that's what he's supposed to do. So if he's supposed to train every day, if he's supposed to do whatever, he's got to do it. You know, that's living in truth. So, you know, we don't always know our destiny. You know, we're living it and then we look at it in the past and we say, oh, I just did that.
Some of us feel like religion or the rituals, or when there's too much of that, we kind of, it feels inauthentic or not of our times, or old and not appropriate. Now, do you ever felt that way?
Well, religion is very young. You know, it's kind of like America, very young. It was something that man brought about. Right? So if you look at the words of Christ, if you look at the words of Buddha, they're all the same. They all tell you to do the correct thing. They don't say, you know, discriminate. They don't say go out there and shoot anybody. They don't say defend yourself, They just say be good, don't murder. They're all the basic truths. So that it really is religion. So if you live by that, they're the Vedic teachings. They're the oldest teachings. But throughout our time, of course, different people started to add things, take away things, and it's turned into what it is now. Those are not the rituals I'm talking about. The rituals which were set out 7, 8, 9,000 years ago, those are the true rituals of living from the ground, letting nature be your teacher, all of those things, which was way beyond religion. It was way there before religion. People who were in the Amazon lived by that. They weren't religious, they just lived by those laws because they knew nature was feeding them. So if I'm going to abuse the hand that feeds me, then I'm abusing myself. So it was just a basic law. So these are all the laws that through the rituals that we learn.
What are some other teachings from that era?
Well, after
nature is
your teacher, because nature has given you the food, has given you the oxygen, has given you the air. Everything is there from nature. But nature is God. God sort of became religious after some centuries ago. But before that, God was never a word that was religious. It was just within you is divinity. So whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter. So the Vedas speak about that. But the Vedas have so many different ritualistic things, and then of course Hinduism came out of the Veda. So people say, oh, but the Vedas are religious. No, they're not religious. They're sort of the Hindus took the Vedas and made it Hinduism. But you never changed the Vedas themselves.
We have an helicopter, I think. It's impossible to shoot without helicopters here or planes.
No. LA is full of helicopters, full of planes. There's always something going on, some noise. You have the beauty, and then you have the man-made things.
That's where the rituals become handy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you notice how much the man-made things make a noise. They're very noisy.
How do you, though, when you go to places like India or around the world, make the difference between a real guru or a fake guru or somebody that wants to manipulate other people's for their own benefit? I mean, it seems like it's quite, for me, doing all those interviews around the world or coming back from Sri Lanka, though I didn't encounter that in Sri Lanka, but there is, there's human beings that kind of put their thoughts on top of original text or intention. So how do you know?
How do you know? If you're looking for a guru outside of yourself, well, then you're susceptible to however your mind picks things. If you're looking for a guru within yourself, then you have a teacher within. It's the divine force. Now, that divine force can reflect teachings outside of you through other people. So guru can be anybody. Right? So if you have the mind of learning, then you'll learn from absolutely everybody, and you'll take a piece of everybody, and you'll move on. If you're looking for a specific guru, then you could, get into some trouble, because then you're looking for an enlightened person. You don't meet very many enlightened people these days. They're very far and few between, and they're hiding. They're just not around because they also don't want the attention. So, they could be a beggar on the street. Often, sadhus dress up as beggars, and you think, they're just sitting as a poor person. But actually, they're enlightened. They just don't want you to bother them. So if you're looking outside, you're going to run into some trouble. You got to really look within. You have all the answers. Why would I have answers and you don't have answers? It's how we go about getting those answers.
You have a very photogenic profile, of course. I mean, you were a model, right?
It's on the front cover.
Yeah. That was your first book.
Otherwise, I was going to put a flower on the cover.
So what was your path from being this model to now?
Well, I grew up in Iran. 10 years I lived there. There was a revolution. Then we got sent to England. I went to boarding school. And
the tie?
Yes, I did. I didn't see my parents for quite a few years. And then I went to sports college. I dropped out of sports college. Somebody stopped me in the street in London and asked me to be a model. So 2 weeks later, I ended up in Paris. And I lived in Paris for 3 or 4 years and started modeling and did some nice jobs and everything. And around 1998, I met Nelson Mandela in his place. He had come out of jail. And I had done
a turning point. It has to be.
Yeah. Well, I looked at him as, I was in this room in his house, in his beautiful house, and it was a show for Versace and Naomi Campbell and all the great sort of models were there. And I looked around the room and I saw, oh wow, I've done so much in fashion, and here I am in the presence of this man, and he's really showing compassion. And it was a turning point of, I need to go now after 12 years and find my passion and my road, because modeling was something I fell into. Somebody asked me to do it, and I sort of went with it. But I knew it wasn't, where I'm heading in life. And after that, I came to New York. I stopped modeling, and I became a yoga teacher, and I didn't really know what I was doing. And then I'd read a book about Ayurveda, and I said, oh, I want to learn about Ayurveda. So I left, I went to India, and there I found my guru, who's an Ayurvedic teacher, and I studied with him. And the last 11...
What's his name?
Dr. Vasudevan, and he lives in Arsha in South India. And I studied with him, and it's been 11 years of study and being with him and being with the school and teaching. Because really the guru doesn't let you teach. He didn't let me teach for about, I think, 5 years.
He said no?
Well, he kind of, as he's guiding you, he shows you that you're not ready. It takes some 5-6 years of really living the path before you can impart the path. And 5 or 6 years is a very short time. And that's really sticking to how the Vedas were taught. You stay with Guru, you learn from Guru, you go and practice. You don't take anybody else on the path, first until the teacher says, well, now you're ready to go. But you don't do what the teacher does, you do what you do.
How do you deal with when the teacher is not really doing it fully? I mean, there's some. I'm thinking of some yogi that have that were saying, "Oh, you need to be celibate," when themselves they were not.
Well,
and then you discover that truth, and you put it out. I put it out, and then I had huge pressure saying, "You better take that one off right now."
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Well, all of the yoga teachers.
So I took all the videos out, of that topic.
Yeah. Well, brahmacharya is written within Patanjali's teaching, and it's taught in the Veda. But brahmacharya means to the level that you can control sexual energy. So everybody can do brahmacharya, and some to the highest level, some to the lowest level. But everybody can. If you're going on the yogic path, you have to choose. If you're what's called a householder who's married, you will have a different control of sexual energy because you have a wife or you have a partner, and it's different. If you're a brahmacharya who's going as a renunciate, then you don't have sex. So a lot of people are misguided by thinking that maybe they can stop themselves. So, they say that they're, kind of like a priest. I'm going to renounce everything.
I don't get that part, because I thought sexual energy was the same as spiritual.
It is. It's all energy. So some people call it sexual energy, some will call it Shakti, some will call it Kundalini. It's all the same energy. It's what you do with that energy. So some will put it into art, some will put it into, building something, some will put it into having sex. Same energy, different use. So there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of people, especially in our Western culture. We straight away in 3 weeks allow people to teach yoga, then we say they're yogis and it's not like that. You can call yourself whatever you want. It's not a problem. How you live is going to give you the experience in life, and then you're going to impart that experience to somebody else. And that's why we have sort of experts in everything, because people have taken a little bit of the whole thing and said, this is what I'm going to do. And it doesn't work like that. When you're under a guru's influence and you a teacher, you learn all and everything, and then you choose a path, and then you continue on your path. So a lot of things are convoluted these days, but it's part of Kali Yuga.
Yeah. Is there some other pitfalls or things to watch for, to be careful of?
You really got to watch yourself. You are the pitfall.
I love that.
People are sort of looking outside and saying, "Oh, I better watch out." Well, you better watch out what you choose, not what the other person's doing. You're going to go into a place, they're serving, McDonald's, they're serving something else, they're serving vegan food, and they're serving you got to choose. If you're going to eat McDonald's, it has one effect. If you choose the vegan food, it has another effect. You made the choice, right? So we're not, of course, if you're 7 years old, it's different. We have to guide. But if you're some 20, 30, whatever years old, you have to be vigilant. You can't just say, oh, everybody else is responsible for my actions. They're not. You have to be very responsible for yourself. But you got to experiment a little bit, but you there are the basic things in life which if you eat certain foods, they have certain effect in you. If you speak a certain way, it has a certain effect. We know those basics. So start with the basics and then continue. Some of the greatest gurus I've ever met, they do basic things.
But they're all vegetarian?
Yeah, they're always vegetarian, yeah.
Why?
Well, ahimsa, which is the first law of Buddhist teachings and the yogic teachings and the Vedic teachings, they're all about non-violence. So if we impart violence onto a living being, one with emotions, one with blood flowing in their veins and stuff, then what we're doing is we're starting with violence. So the karma that we take on from that living being, plus the karma we have to go through with our own karma, it all doesn't play right. But if you're not of that thinking, then you just do whatever you want. It's okay.
Food does. It feels like when we start changing food, we become more conscious and we see things clearer.
Well, generally, if we don't put so much emphasis on food and eating, we become clearer. Because our society is just, food is everywhere. You don't have to think about it. Every corner you go to, there's food. There's a drink. There's something. So it's not something we really have to think about. What we have to think about is eating correctly for our own constitution. So, many people are eating great salads. They're eating all this organic food. I go and shop in organic places. And a lot of people are angry and, and messed up in the head because they don't understand it's not about eating organic food. It's about eating correctly for what you need. Right, so
does body guide us in that, or there's some things, because I know Ayurveda, a big portion is the food, right?
Yeah. If you listen to the body, it will guide you. But if you think you're just going to eat food and then you're going to go get up and do whatever you want, then that food plays a certain role in your body, right? So an athlete has to eat in a certain way, whereas a yogi has to eat in another way, and a housewife who's running around with her kid has to eat another way. We have to eat accordingly. How much energy are we going to, expand today? We need to eat maybe a little bit more. What's the weather like? It's hot. I got to change my diet to seasonal eating. So if I eat something that's imported from another country that's cold, probably won't have a good effect on my body.
I see you talking of ghee.
Oh yeah, I talk a lot about ghee.
What is that?
Ghee is clarified butter. So it's when we churn the butter, churn the milk, we get the butter, and we evaporate all the liquid out of the butter. It's just fat. And that fat absorbs into the body, and it's one of the greatest medicines we use in Ayurveda. We also mix herbs in it to make it medicinal. And that goes into the blood and gets taken into the bone and into the marrow and the deeper tissue. So it does wonders for the body. It really makes a lot of strength.
Is that still valid these days? Because I'm wondering how thousands and centuries ago,
Well, today we have people eating the worst kind of fat. Today it's more relevant than ever, because what are people eating?
You mean saturated fat?
Saturated fat. They're eating all kind of, even the cold pressed, all these things you're eating. It's how you're digesting them that is the point, not how great. It's like I said about organic food. It's not about taking that organic flaxseed oil. It's how much of it are you really absorbing? That's really what matters. With ghee, it's been there written about. It's not, these books that were written weren't written by ordinary people. They weren't written like I write a book these days. I write a book based on my teachings of the Veda, on my experience, and that's it. At this level. I don't go to this level and I don't write about this level. I teach at this level because that's where I am, right? So we have teachers that are writing about this level, but they're down here. That doesn't impart experience. So the people who wrote all the Vedas were sages. So I don't question the sage. I just say, oh, he wrote about ghee like this. He said this. Okay, I'm going to do it. And then you continue with that. But it's the quantity of ghee that you have that matters.
I want to speak of this latest book. Your second book, The One Plan. What is this?
The One Plan is based on Patanjali's teachings. So Patanjali was a sage who came about 2,200 years ago, and he wrote the Yoga Sutras. And the Yoga Sutra has 4 parts to it, which are called padas. And I took the 2 middle padas, which incorporate yoga postures, breathing, and talk about meditation. So I took those two and I put them in a very simple book about how you understand it, how you can apply it, what are the things you do while you're driving your car to eating your food. Very basic things you already do. Now I put it in a 1-year plan. And the reason I put it in 1 year was 1 year is pretty much the minimum you can kind of do this kind of worthwhile work. You know, people these days want a little work. You know, 4-hour plan, 1-hour plan, 21-day plan and all that. It's not possible to do something so deeply rooted in ancient teaching in 21 days. You can taste it. It will be like you have a cake and you just put your finger in it and you taste it, but you don't really taste the cake. You know? So I'm trying to give you the cake and tell you don't eat it. Eat it over 1 year, you know, and then you'll get such a taste for this cake. You won't overload because you have a whole year to do it. And then you'll continue it and put it into your whole lifestyle. Because if you keep going around tasting cake, all you're going to get is flavors. Yeah. You're never going to understand one thing. And this life is about understanding and becoming that expert that you are in one thing, you know, and living it. If you don't live it, you never truly get a taste for it.
I feel a little bit different, but because I get to interview so many different people that I feel each time there's this interview, there's an inspiration, there's something to be applied or not, there is a resonance there, and then it can be applied. And I feel so much that my path has enlightened because of that. There's so much more joy in me, and freedom, and feminine energy, and creativity, and all of that, that sometimes I have a hard time to understand the one path with one teacher and one guru. Can you explain that? Because I feel a lot of the co-creators watching maybe are in that space too.
Well, you're going and interviewing people, you're listening. You know, you're kind of interacting. You're not taking on...
Kind of, fully. I'm there with you.
But you're not taking on the path, right? So you go from person to person. So that's not taking on the path. So you're not. It's not a practical way. That's not what you're trying to do. You're trying to report on the path, inspire people, tell people. But the person who's listening has to choose. Has to say, I can't keep jumping from this yoga to this one and then this type of meditation to that one and then I read this book and then I jump to that. You have to have a teacher. And that teacher, you know, maybe with you a few lifetimes. You know? So as yogis, we think upon lifetimes. We don't think about just this life. So when I'm eating the same food every day, when I'm reading the same texts every day, when I'm chanting the same things, I don't want it to change. I want it to keep unveiling what's behind it. If I keep swapping the path, I kind of go for this one and I go, oh, you know, I went down that path. Not really for me, but I didn't go the full path. I didn't go 7 miles. I might have only gone 1 mile. And after 2 miles was something else, 3 miles was something, you see? So
even if from the first book title, you're saying we have the guru in us, so there is this wisdom already, this blueprint kind of that we all have within our soul. Is the soul okay?
Yeah, the soul is fine. The soul is not changing. The soul is just watching everything happen, and it has a purpose to come through this body to live certain things out at this time on earth. But the mind has other ideas. The mind is attached to, oh, what a beautiful day. Oh, I like the wind. Oh, this is, you know, having a great chat. It keeps making up stuff. So the soul doesn't make up anything. It's just there observing it as it does, you know. But it still has to go through karma.
I get that. Well, this is very, very interesting. Is there some other aspects or some other things that you would like to point out that are important to say in this interview? Mm-hmm. There's lots to say.
Yeah. You know, most people are suffering because they've chosen to think a certain way, which leads them to eat certain things, to behave in certain ways, to speak a certain way. And you just have to know that you do have a choice in all of it. But if you do choose one thing, be happy with it, even if it's causing you harm. You know, the guy who chooses to smoke shouldn't be suffering because he's smoking. He's going to suffer anyway because he's smoking. So why sit there and say, oh my God, I shouldn't be smoking? If you're going to smoke, just do it and don't suffer so much. So it's the same for everybody. If you choose a path, whatever it is, you're getting obese, you're I don't know, whatever you're doing, you're deciding to, you know, just do it. Because the Veda says it's better to live fully in that thing that you truly want to do. You'll be living a truthful life. You might be harming yourself, you know, you might be not good for you, but it's more truthful. And if you have the inclination to live in what we call a better way, that's why we don't really have these words better or worse and good and bad and all that. We just have, that's what is, So make your choices and live by them. Don't give yourself even more suffering by putting yourself down, saying, well, I should be living something else. Just live it out.
Last little question that I'm just thinking of regarding breatharians and pranism. What do you think of that?
They're on another level. Again, traveling through Himalayas, there's people living just off the air. But in the air, there's food. There's yoga techniques where you do breathing practices where you extract the goodness out of the air. So it's like food. So they're just eating at another level. People.
It requires a different level of consciousness.
Well, it's a focus. It really is a focus. Their focus isn't, oh, my telephone, oh, I'm going to go get some food, oh, I better stop off and pick up my kid from school. They're not focused in that. They're focused in, prana. Same with, like I met Surya Ji, he's taking the solar energy. So he's eating off that. So it's
some from Agape Love.
Where's that?
Some from in Sri Lanka. I've interviewed someone that nourishes himself from this devotional love.
Yeah, exactly. So there's people doing all sorts of incredible things as an example of how you can live because they made a choice. So imagine if somebody's living off the air, how far away the person who's just eating is. 3 meals a day, doing all the normal things. But you could jump from here to here in an instant if you decided to. Everybody has that opportunity, but it's not everybody's reality because you would have to change your life a lot. But it
can become dangerous.
Well, yeah, for the one who's not supposed to do it, So it's dangerous to the one who's supposed to do it and doesn't do it also.
Yeah. And detox, do you go through those regularly or do you cleanse yourself or it's just an ongoing process?
Ayurveda teaches that detox is happening constantly in the body. Now, detox is usually in the mind of a person who goes out and gets wasted a little bit on food and drinks and other things, and then says, "Oh my God, I got to clean myself," forgetting that the body's already cleaning itself. Give it some help. So you don't actually need to go out there and buy all sorts of crazy stuff and put it in your body, and then go out and do those extreme things again. Why not do some of those extreme things you do little by little, and give the body a break, and the body will clean itself. No, but if it needs extra help, then give it some help. But we're not in a strange moment. We're just in a very excessive moment that's going to get more excessive, where everybody is just consumed by consuming. So even when they have a little knowledge, the guru within them speaking, they don't hear it. They hear somebody else. So they need me to tell them, oh, pick up that instead of that. And then they eat it and go, wow, I feel so much better. Well, you have the knowledge, you're just not living it.
Just to end this conversation, the main focus, where should be the main focus every day?
Main focus should be on whatever you choose to focus on. Nobody can make those choices for us. Everybody's asking, what is the one thing I can do? Where is my focus? What should I do? If there was one answer to everything, everybody would be a guru, everybody would be a yogi, everybody would be a king or whatever they are. Everybody is where they are because they're supposed to be there. From there, decide what you want to do. If you say, I don't have a choice, well, then you don't have a choice. If you say, wow, I have so many choices, you probably won't do any of them because you have too many choices, So somewhere along the line, you have to find that balance of, maybe I've got too many choices, but I got to choose something to do. I'm going to choose this to do. And the one who thinks I have no choices, well, he's got to look a little bit stronger and go, oh, wow, there's... Like yesterday I was at the farmer's market and there's always a homeless guy standing there. So I have chat with him every week. This week he told me he lost everything in the storage. And he said, this is all I got. I said, great. And he said, what's great about it? I said, well, you're actually where most people are looking to go, but they're just going in the opposite direction. They all want simplicity and you got simplicity. So you think it's a problem because you don't have more. And the person who has more is thinking they don't have more. So if you look at your life in a simple way and say, oh, wow, I got simplicity, then from there you can make another choice, to make your life not better, but continue. Because if you keep thinking, I've got to make my life better, then the carrot's always there. But if you just say, well, I've got to make the next choice, then you'll keep living. So he suddenly went, "Oh, thanks. Yeah, I didn't think about that." Right? So, because I was explaining, I said, my wife and I, we sleep on the floor, we live in a small place, we could afford a palace, for what? I'm trying to focus on very basic things in life, so all of life doesn't become, overwhelming, because your mind can go from peacefulness to chaos in a second. Doesn't matter who you are. So all I'm doing is controlling it to not go into chaos.
Thank you so much, Cameron.
Yeah, thank you.
Yogi Cameron. I should
Thank
say.
you.
Thank you. Much love, my delicious co-creators from beautiful Santa Monica, Los Angeles, near Los Angeles. And thank you so much for all this beautiful advice. And
Yeah, I got it off somebody else, so I'm just passing it on.
thanks for passing it on then. Much love. Big kisses. Bye.